Hi and welcome. We are so glad you're here. My name is Melisa Uchida and I'm here with Michelle Ann Collins. And we are having a conversation uh, about losing a spouse to suicide and and healing and making the journey after something traumatic like this. So I am a grief educator, a grief coach, as well as a holistic health coach. I use mind body practices to help people heal. And Michelle, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Similar. I am also a grief coach and a certified grief educator, along with a yoga therapist and a wellness coach. So we have a lot of alignment in our businesses, which is great. You also teach yoga, right?
I do. I've
Yeah.
been teaching yoga almost 30 years. And
Yeah.
that's something I don't know, Michelle, what we've been through. I don't know how I would have gotten through. I would have been a completely different type of a healing had I not had the yoga background and the
Hmm.
mindfulness background. I
Yeah.
have no idea how people go through grief without it because even with these tools that I'd spent decades um, practicing, so they were pretty ingrained, but even with the tools, I still couldn't breathe. I still
Right.
couldn't regulate in any way. It was so far beyond anything I'd ever experienced. Um,
Yeah. I
and we're
had
not
the
talking,
same. Yeah. I had the same exact experience. I remember even berating myself, telling myself, Michelle, you have all these tools to deal with challenges, and you're a mess and you're laying in bed and you can't function. And I would, on top of the grief and trauma that I was experiencing, I was being hard on myself. So we ended our last video with the importance of not doing that, with recommending that you try to be your best friend or be your most supportive self, or at least stop picking on yourself. And then we're going to go through some early steps in this video to help you through those early times of the intense grief and trauma, uh, the what do I do, the whys, all of that. We have some, and we're going to share simple tools and tips that you can use any time of day, anytime that you are feeling like you just don't want to feel. And you don't want to feel that way. You don't want what's happened to have happened, and we understand that.
yeah. So, very first off is that the police know that the police will do an autopsy. They will do an investigation. It's not like you'll get a death certificate right away. They will, um, for me, it took 9 months in Nate's death to get a death certificate, and you will get a temporary death certificate. You'll want to carry, I created a binder. Actually, I don't think I created it. Someone else, I think, created it, but it was called Nate's Death Binder. And I put absolutely everything in that binder because you can't think. There's no memory. There's no cognition. Everything needed to be written down, from phone numbers to the medical examiner to the detectives to what to do with how to clean something, if taking care of the body and cleaning the scene. Um, and I had a friend, my closest friends, thank God she dealt with that. I don't know. I couldn't have. I had a lot of people that came in and helped with a lot of those things because I was so completely lost. But having everything in a binder was definitely
Hmm.
helpful, and having other people drive was another really helpful thing for me. Um,
Yeah, I think so. Tip one, I'm just going to call it get help.
yeah,
You may feel alone. You may feel like you're the only person this has ever happened to, but you do not have to reinvent the wheel. I have several books with detailed lists, and there's a list in one of my books as well about what to do.
and
So
which book is
find
that?
yourself a list. The first book, The
This one.
Surviving Spouse or Partner Suicide Loss. Oh, look.
Look,
Yes,
there it
the
is.
purple
Yes,
book.
it is.
Yeah, and there's a Widow's Guide book, and I mean, there's a lot of materials out there and support, and you can always contact Melisa or I if you want more specific help. But definitely, I didn't have it. It wasn't called the Death Binder. Mine was called the Notebook of Doom. That's what I called it.
Mm.
But same thing. I had gathered all of Glenn's ID, like his passport and all of that. And then when the death certificates came, they were in there. And just I'm not sure if all of you have this experience, or Melissa, if you did, but I needed, for some of the institutes that needed confirmation of his death, they wanted the long form death certificate, and some would accept the short form death certificate. The difference being the long form had the cause of death on it, which for about 2 years, I couldn't even look at that long form. So grateful to have a friend to look at the death certificate, put it in an envelope or put it on a fax machine. Yeah, some people wanted faxes, and scan it and send it off. Or sometimes they want originals, not copies, so you need to actually mail it. And I am so grateful for the friend that I had that would do that, because looking at, and it said, trigger alert, gunshot wound to the head on the death certificate. And every time I looked at that, I would fall apart. I couldn't keep it together, and I definitely couldn't do the work I needed to do, the paperwork. So I highly recommend. There's going to be a lot of people, you'll be surprised, a lot of people who are affected by your suicide loss, the person you lost's death, because they had a relationship you may not even be aware of. So it's such a strong, when you have a sudden death like that, people come in and they want to feel better. They want to do something.
Mhm.
So let them do it. Let them help you.
That's a
Make a
really good
list.
point, that they people want to help. It's helpful for their healing if they can help. And a lot of women are used to having to do things on their own, and are kind of like, no, I'm strong, I can do it on my own. This is not the time for that. Um, take all the help that you can get, and that might be meals or food. I have 3 kids, so I had people, someone started a food train, and they brought a
Mhm.
cooler and they left it on the porch, and people were bringing food and meals into it. Let people help. I'm so incredibly grateful to Copper Mine. Copper Mine is a camp. Copper Mine is a kids facility, so they do all of these different activities, sports and things like that out here. And Keanu, my son, was enrolled in 3 weeks of summer camp. So my husband died in June, and 3 weeks of summer camp, and camp's expensive for kids. So that was all I had put him in. And when Nate died, I called to pull him out of camp because I was so worried financially about that. I was so worried. I was like, I can't pay the mortgage. I don't know how I'm going to live. It's not like we had savings or saved up or anything. So I called them and I told them what was happening. And I said, I really just need the money. I'm so sorry. And they said, oh, no, 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 no. A miracle. The woman who was running the camp knows death. So she understood grief. And she said, it will be the best thing for him to be here every day, to have a place to go where he can play, where he doesn't have to be exposed to your grief, because you're going to need to be grieving. And she said, we are gifting him camp. And they've held true to that. And every summer, that's where he goes. And it's now like his home away from home. It's his, it really, and I can't tell you the difference that made in terms of his healing and my healing, because it allowed me to have these days. My daughters were off, they were doing other things, they were with other family members. It allowed me to have the days to simply be on the floor in puddles like just be hyperventilating or crying or breaking down or screaming or throwing things or breaking things or all the things that you do when you're in that early grief, and knowing that he was with safe people, with kids, and he could play and he didn't have to see that every day. And that would be, if you're a parent and you are grieving, ask for help to have your kids be doing things, so
Doing
that
regular kid things.
regular
And that's
kid
something,
things.
that's a really good point to bring up. So our children will grieve in age appropriate ways. And this is something that I learned really deeply in the grief educator course, which was so helpful to me. Uh, when you're an adult and you've lost your spouse, it's a very different situation than when you're a child and you've lost a parent or a step parent. And children, depending on their age, will grieve. They'll be their kid, they'll be themselves, they'll be their age first and grieve second, and they may grieve in a way that you cannot as an adult understand. Like, how can you the next day go to school? One of my children went to school. Glenn died on a Saturday, and on Monday they were like, can I go to school and be with my friends? I was like, sure, do something normal. At the time, I I couldn't think of a reason to keep him home, but at the same time I thought that was pretty crazy to try to just go to school and be normal. But what I came to learn through the grief educator course, and also, just studying grief in general from reading books and taking courses, is that children need to be children and grieve. And you can't grieve as a parent for them. You cannot do that work for them. Unfortunately, we can't prevent their pain, and we can't end their suffering. We just have to be as supportive as possible and keep things like Melisa did as normal as possible. And they may not grieve at all for years. It may be
Yes.
something that happens when their brains have matured and they're in their 20s or 30s or 50s. So if you are struggling with the way your child is grieving, try to just give them grace and understand that their job is to be a child.
And also, another important thing is to put the life mask. I didn't even see my kids' grief. I mean, I was so, like, I did not even, it wasn't even, I couldn't even allow that in. My vision got so small that it was like looking at life through a straw, through like a long telescopic straw. And at the end of the telescope was just was the why, was the where is Nate now, was the what, all like very, so put the oxygen mask on yourself, take care of your healing, and give yourself that permission, and ask the community for help, friends, family, for help, to help with the kids so that they can be doing fun things and doing normal kid things. And then give them sheets of paper, actually, depending on their ages too, where they can just start to color or draw or express things that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of great children's books out there for grief, and you can find one that's age appropriate and learn a lot while you read it to your child or let your child read it. And there's a lot of organizations. Put a friend on that task. Back to getting help. There's going to be a lot of people at the beginning that say, "Hey, let me know what you need." Okay, write down their names and phone numbers because you won't remember. And then a month goes by, 4 months, 6 months goes by, and you need something. Oh, you know what? I think my kid is struggling. Maybe I need a grief book. Call that friend up. The invitation doesn't have an expiration date.
Yes.
Even a year later, I was struggling with estate taxes, and I remember reaching out to someone who I had, it was a friend of Glenn's, and he had sent me a message on Facebook and said, "Hey, if there's ever anything you need, you know." And I put it out there, and he showed up at my house in 15 minutes, and he had accounting stuff, and wasn't not grief brain. So I'm dealing with numbers, which I'm never good at, even when I'm not in trauma.
Right.
And he had that all the taxes organized, all the numbers where they needed to be, and the paperwork filled out in probably an hour and a half. And I had been stressing about this for months.
Wow.
So, yeah, just these angels
So,
are all over the place, but you do
yes.
have to ask because people will want to go back to their lives and stop checking in and not stay with you in grief. But and for the kids, I mean, people always want to take your kids out for pizza or whatever, do
Mhm.
something fun. That's the easiest way to support a griever, right? Play with the kid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ask for help. Keep a list of everyone that offered to help. They don't know what to do, they just need to be told.
Yeah. I think, yes, that's so good. And keep it really, I had to get one thing done a day. That was kind of my, you
Mm.
know, right in life before Nate died, it was very much like I might have 30, 40 things on my list of things to do. It's not possible in grief. So I might make a list and then go, what's the most important thing today? Making one phone call would wipe me out. Were you like
Hmm.
that? Or it was just
Oh yeah.
one phone call? That was it. I was done for the day. I mean,
Yeah,
um,
I did the same thing. I was okay, I have to check one thing off my list. Yep, I did this one phone call.
one
And
phone
even
call.
if I just got a busy signal, that was it. I'm back on the floor or back in bed. I did my one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? What are some other things on your checklist?
Well, I think taking care of your physical body, we have this checklist of paperwork we need to do, estate things we need to take care of, and all of these things. The bills, they don't go away. You don't get grace. You got to
Yeah.
pay the minimums, or you're going to go to collections. That happened to me with one of Gwen's bills, and some of them were kind, but making those phone calls was so hard. But make sure, if you can, like Melisa was saying about putting the oxygen mask on, breathe and take care of your physical body if you can. I know that sounds impossible, but if you can eat a little something each day that has some nourishment in it, if you can get some rest, I know it's hard to sleep, but getting rest and eating and maybe get outside a little bit. Uh, but again, underneath all of that is just taking care of yourself. So if you feel like laying in bed all day and crying, then today's the day to lay in bed all day and cry. And you might need to text someone to walk your dog or something, but just give yourself grace. And then when you feel up to it, try to eat something healthy and try to get some sleep. You may have to reach out to your doctor to get some sleep aids,
Mhm.
whatever you can do, because during sleep, hopefully you can get a break from the intensity of the experience that you're going through.
Yeah. I there are other good sleep alternatives too, even to medication. But there's valerian is really nice. Kava is also a really great one. Cannabis is legal in many states now, so cannabis might be an option to help you to sleep. And oh,
Melatonin,
magnesium, melatonin, and
magnesium,
magnesium.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So and that's not the scope of our practice, but just look into it, ask your friends who you trust. Hopefully you know someone educated in human physiology. It might be a doctor, it might not be. But some trusted resource to and keep trying. That's the other thing. If today's not a get out of bed day, maybe tomorrow will be. But just keep trying. Don't give up. This is not the end of anything. It is the horrible beginning of the next phase of your life.
yeah, I had many weeks, I think, where I just said, okay, just this breath, just this breath. I got just this breath. Um, and when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I used to smoke, and I quit smoking when I started doing yoga. And I quit drinking and quit smoking, and I would go into the drugstore to where I would buy cigarettes. And I said, I'm not walking out with a pack of cigarettes. So I'm going to stay in here until the urge to buy a pack of cigarettes is gone. Like, so that, and I would just kind of stay and look at all the shampoos and just slowly walk up and down the aisle. 5 minutes. Okay. It's going to be, sometimes it was 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 1 minute. I'm just 1 minute, hold off. Don't go to the register yet. Don't go, give me one more minute. Give me one more minute. Give me one more minute. And on a much bigger scale, it was like that of, okay, you know what? I'm going to breathe right now. I'm just going to sit here and focus on my breath for a minute. And then one more minute, one more minute. Because I think sometimes we start to go into, what about, we were supposed to do this and we were supposed to do this and we were supposed to, this was our life and we had all these things planned, and it's so easy to get to just kind of spiral into that. But with grief, it's so hard, but we just want to be with it for a bit. We just have to get through it. And sometimes I would just run my hands underwater, or light a candle and watch a flame, or sit outside and look at the stars.
Yeah. Those are all wonderful mindfulness practices. And I think probably the next video, that's what we'll be focusing on, is the mindfulness and how to alleviate suffering in the immediate and the long term.
Thank you so much for being here. If you have friends that you think would benefit, share it, because this is why we're doing this. We want to help others who have lost a loved one to suicide, to support them on their healing journey, and to remove the stigma of it. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for your attention. We'll see you in the next video.